Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. So about a month ago I made this react video where I reviewed the information presented during one of the latest History Hits videos that was talking about the Romans and the Greeks in a comparative key. Now the original video is very long, so here I was just reviewing the section where they compared Roman and Greek weapons. Today, however, we're going to review the section which is focused on Greek and Roman armor. And I'll be honest, I have quite a few things to say. So, prepare for pedantic Metatron. Don't forget to click the link in the description and pinned comment to check out the full video. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, let's have a look at the armor. What are they going to say?
The next point is armor.
I'll start with this one. I mean, we'll go from top to bottom. We've got an interesting replica of the classic Roman legionary helmet of the early imperial period. Now, of course, it gets a bit more armor added to it and reinforced over time, as I'll talk to. But this one seems, well, first of all, the Roman legionary helmet wasn't meant to be very heavy. There was discovered in a field in Suffolk the Hawkton helmet, which some believe is actually, although it looks similar to a Roman legionary helmet, they believe it's a gladiator's helmet because it's much heavier and more kind of used for maybe like 20-minute bouts as for a gladiator.
And it seems
but the Roman helmet was not meant to be like overly heavy.
Of course.
You have a lot of protection for the wearer. First of all, mainly made out of iron, maybe a bit of brass around as well. But you have, first of all, let's talk about this rim guard at the front. This is to protect against slashing weapons down, because one of the main areas that an enemy will be trying to attack is the face. So you've got added protection for the rim guard, and also to kind of prevent blows from hitting like the nose and the front of the face, because you don't have that noticeable nose guard as you do with the like classical Greek hoplite. You've got these kind of flappy cheek pieces as well. Once again, that's extra protection.
This is true, but what he just said only applies to the Corinthian helmet. There are plenty of other helmets in Greek army that have zero protection for the face. So I wouldn't say, I know that they are comparing these two only, but these two are not the only representatives of a typical Greek helmet and a typical Roman helmet. They are in our collective imagination right now, but there are a lot of helmets like that are completely open in the face here for the Greeks as well.
Against slashing swords and so on that you'll be facing for an Iron Age warrior and so on. You have at the back this big neck guard as well. Once again, the same kind of thing, extra protection against people wanting to slash down on your face. Over time, I don't really see how much you can see on this one. This one looks a bit of kind of decorative design. There is a bit of contested debate around the beginning of the 2nd century AD when the Emperor Trajan invades Dacia, which is modern-day Romania. And the Dacians, I'm sure you know, they're renowned for having this double-handed, scythe-like polearm slashing weapon called a falx. And apparently, well, it is contested, but one line of argument is that because these falxes were so devastating when slashing down, to give the legionaries extra equipment, they had a kind of like almost crossbars to the top to kind of help absorb more of those blows.
Can I be obnoxious for a second? Probably people will click away. He did say that the backplate was used to protect the face. The backplate was used to protect the neck. Thank you. That's the condescending Metatron of the day.
But that is the standard kind of design of a Roman legionary helmet. Further down you have perhaps the most recognizable part of a Roman legionary's armor, which is the lorica segmentata. Now I love the lorica
As seen in Asterix comics,
As seen in Asterix comics. At the same time, we don't know what the Romans called it. Lorica segmentata literally means segmented armor, and that's the modern name for it. We know they called chainmail hamata, but we don't know.
I actually think that, no, they didn't call that. He's incorrect with this one. So before I was just being funny. Okay, I like him as a presenter. I was just being funny with the neck, the face. He just misspoke. It's fine. I do it all the time. I'm the master of misspeaking. But this one he got wrong. The Romans did not call it hamata. Hamata is as much as a neologism as segmentata is. They called it gallica. Exactly, Ryan. Or they just called it armor. We have mentions for both. Sometimes they just called it armor, and other times they call it gallica. But lorica hamata, which comes from hamus, which is the ring, it's not a period term, just like lorica segmentata is not a period term. Some have speculated, I don't know if he's going to say that maybe instead of calling it segmentata, it was called laminata. And the only reason why that may be a bit more probable than segmentata, which is a neologism, is simply because we don't know what it was called, but we do know that what they called the actual segments of the girth hoops. And they were called laminae, lames, basically. So since we know they called those laminae, and one would be a lamina, then it is possible that they called it lorica laminata, but we don't know, unfortunately.
What they called this style. And it seems to have been introduced around the beginning of the 1st century AD or just before that.
Just before,
and that is
yeah.
because some of the earliest archaeological evidence we have, and best archaeological evidence we have for the lorica segmentata, comes from Germany and that site of Calcresa that I've mentioned, where you have basically 3/4 of this plate armour, of this kind of segmented armour surviving, and archaeologists have been able to garner a lot from that beauty.
For those of you who are interested in the, I'm not correcting him, it's fine, he's speaking English, but for those of you who are interested in Latin and the precise phonemic vowel length, this vowel, the O and the E, are both long, so it's lorica, and then segmentata. So this A is long, so lorica segmentata is how you pronounce it. Hello, what you looking at? As you know, we have created a Metatron plushie for all of our fans and supporters, and we are really trying to hit 200 sales. We are 79% funded, and we have to hit 200 to be able to ensure the production. If you watching this right now were to get a plushie, we would hit 160, and then we would only be 40 short of ensuring production. If you like my content, please consider supporting me by getting a plushie today. Thank you so much. Believe it or not, as a modern Italian, I actually find it difficult to lengthen the O. Because as an Italian, I would either say lorica or lorica. I wouldn't, but the idea that I have to lengthen this, a bit like Romani, that's also another weird one that I have to lengthen the O, but that's how it is. Latin has a massive difference in terms of length of vowels, and it's phonemic, meaning that if you pronounce the vowel long or short, will influence the meaning of the word. There will be a semantic shift. That's, for example, how the apple in the Bible, in Adam and Eve, that's where it came from, because in the original Hebrew there is no apple, it's a round fruit. Full stop. We have no idea what kind of fruit that is. The only reason why in the Vulgate in Latin it became the apple is because you can create a little bit of a double, not a joke, but like a double meaning, because malus and malus, they sound almost the same, the only difference being the length of the vowel, and it can mean apple or evil. So that's why the apple is in the Bible in English and in Italian and in modern languages. In the original, it's just a round fruit. It could be a date. It could be an orange. We have no way to know.
Beautiful piece of kit. It's made up of about 40 iron plates, and it's fastened together with kind of copper alloy washers, and buckles, leather surviving on it too from that archaeological discovery from Calcresa, which gives people more of a sense of how it was tied together. And the fascinating thing there is not just the outside, it's the inside of the armour as well, where they found these buckles as well to kind of tighten it. The first version of it, it seems that it is just kind of almost kind of tank top-ish. There's not much shoulder protection. That is added later. There are later examples of lorica segmentata, places like Corbridge and Newstead in Scotland as well, where bits have survived. And it seems that there's more arm protection, and also the outside buckles are removed and it's just kind of kept inside because they were seen to be a bit more, you know, it could easily get knocked off kind of thing and damage the equipment. No greaves in a Roman legionary soldier of the imperial period. There had greaves earlier on, at least on one foot, on one leg.
He's right.
But by this time there are no greaves at all there. And a manica, I guess, is the other thing you should mention. It seems to be later on that this arm guard is added to their right arm, maybe during the Dacian Wars as well with the fount, a bit of added protection, but we do know that manicas added later on. I think I've gone through everything.
What is cool about the Latin word manica is that we still have the exact same word in modern Italian, pronounced exactly the same way, manica, and it just means sleeve. And it meant sleeve. It's just the same word. They didn't even bother to change it in 2,000 years, longer than that, in fact. So these are maniche in modern Italian. This is a manica. Kind of a cool little thing.
Is the armour of a Roman legionary soldier.
There you go.
Over to you.
Let's go.
Yes, so the Greek hoplites, obviously, they have very iconic armour, so it's very easy to sort of talk about it. This is the main item that I think is just widely recognised, the Corinthian helmet, right?
Yeah.
This gets introduced, or at least we first see it on vases, and then later we have loads and loads and loads of dedicated examples. So at Olympia, they have shelves and shelves of these, right? Wow. Corinthian style helmets from the archaic period. The funny thing is that around the time we mostly talk about the Greeks, in the classical period, time of the Persian Wars and after, until the time of Alexander. These things they're still around. Some people might use them, but they've kind of gone out of style. So this kind of thing is an early form of armor, which is very comprehensive, as you can see. It covers the whole face with these long cheek plates. It's got the nose guard. It's got this, at the back, you can see it's got a sort of neck guard here as well that extends quite far down. A little bit. It's kind of the same thing as the Roman helmet, just sort of less sticky outy, which is the technical term.
More similar to the previous Montefortino, which makes sense when it comes to the time scale a little more.
And then basically it covers the whole face, except for initially it doesn't even have ear holes. This one has a few sort of small sort of bits where you can see that the ears might have, so sound would have come in more easily. The idea is that this offers sort of fairly comprehensive protection, but it's often been argued that it's actually quite stifling, it's quite restricting. So you can't hear very much, you can't see very much, it's quite heavy. And you have to imagine that on top of this, they would usually have had a crest or even a double crest. So you'd have quite extensive decoration on top of this. It's made of bronze, not iron, which is one of the big differences between the two. Now, I think reenactors are not necessarily so convinced that this is so restrictive. Like they tend to think that there's, depending on the design, you can actually see and hear what you need to see and hear. But it certainly seems that this iconic shape, it just kind of didn't really stick around for more than a few centuries before other types started to overtake and started become more common. So for instance, on this image, you actually have this guy wearing an Attic helmet. So this is a different style, which later becomes actually the Roman sort of typical Roman Republican helmet for officers.
It's kind of similar with the cheek pieces there.
Exactly.
You can see,
so it's got the cheek pieces, it's got a more articulated neck guard, it's got a bit of a sort of cap at the front.
In fact, the cheek pieces were so ubiquitous in the Mediterranean world that I have found some, with my lead researcher, we were noticing that sometimes there are mentions among the Celtic and Germanic tribes mostly, that they would remove them. And there are a few, like imagine if they loot some helmets from Roman legionaries, some of them would detach them. And you're like, why would you do that? Because you lose the protection. We don't know. It's speculative. Maybe it's because they didn't think they really needed it. Maybe they were like, I don't need that. I'm good with my shield. Maybe. That could be like something, I can see a Germanic warrior thinking that way. The other possibility that was presented by another historian is that maybe they looked too distinctively Roman/Mediterranean to them. And so, imagine like if you're looting a uniform of your enemy, even from a modern perspective, you're going to remove the symbols. You don't want to be, and so maybe it's an interesting food for thought. I'm not saying that that's how it is, but it is possible. And they covered up the epic beards. I mean, true, but, the Greeks have some epic beards too, particularly the philosophers. So, there is that.
It still has the crest, but it's sort of a more complex design, but definitely more open-faced, lighter. It leaves more visibility, it leaves more room for the ears. And there are other designs that are even more open-faced, and in particular in the classical period, one helmet that seems to become really popular among the Greeks, so-called pilos helmet, based on a felt cap that may initially have been the cap you wore inside of a bigger helmet, but it becomes just made in bronze, and it's just a cone, it's just a sort of...
It's the conical one,
isn't it? It's just a cap,
it?
exactly. And so it's very plain, it doesn't have the cheek guards, although sometimes it does. It doesn't have a neck guard, it's literally just a sort of cone that you put on your head. Much in the style of like helmets that you might see in World War II or something like that, which is a very basic sort of cap that might protect all the important parts without trying to sort of encase you entirely in metal.
No, and also it's interesting. So this is the classic. When it's the Roman army is a professional army. Yep. So yes, although there will be small differences in it, maybe with design and particular design styles, but in regards to the overall look and function, this is kind of a regular that you see for more than 100 years. And actually preceding it, you do have like the Montefortino helmet, which is all like, I'm not going to say it's exactly the same as the pilos, but it's more kind of that idea.
It's just a cap, a bowl, like you put the
it's better than a pilos in my opinion, because then again, you would add the cheek guard over here. You do have a little bit of protection in the neck. Did you know that early historians actually did it wrong? And they thought that this was the front, and they called it a cap, and they were wrong. This is the back, and then eventually they figured it out. But this is, I like the Montefortino helmet. It's called Montefortino because that's where it was found. What was it called in period? Man, I actually know, I knew the term for this one. I don't remember the exact term for this one in Latin. I used to know it. I'll have to ask my researchers, I forgot it. But it wasn't Montefortino, obviously, because that's just the name of the place where it was found in Italy. It's a nice little helmet, though.
on your head. There are a couple of bits sticking out, but otherwise it's very simple.
Yeah,
shape.
and like earlier in the Mid-Republic as well, you have like a more, chainmail is prominent, but also for those who couldn't afford chainmail when they have to buy their own armour, some of them have like a bronze pectoral in the middle, like the classic image of the Hastati soldiers.
Cardiophylax are they can be a square, they can be rhomboid, and they can be circular, just protecting the heart.
Just like they have that one bit of bronze in the middle, aim here, please. Like, don't aim here, which I find really, really interesting. And the shield, I think, is a bit bigger too. The eye, you mentioned that thing about the ears, which actually I forgot to mention about this one, which is really interesting. Talking to someone at it was Leeds Armories about it, or an experimental archaeologist about it a couple of years ago, and he mentioned when talking about kind of the ears of here, how there's a bit more protection added at the sides, and yes, protection was one of the things. He also said it could be that it was to amplify sound. So if the battlefield is a very noisy place, people are dying, shouting, all that stuff, and that just helps amplify sound. Now I haven't.
Sounds made up to me, to be honest. Sometimes historians make stuff up. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes they do. I think there are some academics that overcomplicate stuff, but to me it's just protection. I could be wrong though. Maybe he's right. Who knows? Maybe he's right.
Tested it myself, so I can't say, but that's another reason. Like visually, I have worn one of these helmets along with the Segmentata and the Caligai and everything. Like it does have that. You don't feel restricted at all.
Yeah, it's very open, right?
Yeah,
you can see what you need to see.
And I guess that kind of not having a nose piece at all, I think, is kind of countered by having this rim at the front as well for overall slashing. Hopefully as well. Some people said the nose is obviously the most could potentially be the worst, the least protected part.
But it's a key difference. So the Corinthian helmet is made out of a single piece of bronze, right? So you have a plate of bronze, and by hammering it slowly into a shape, you essentially create this whole, everything about this, right? There are no parts added. I mean, sometimes there are some cases known with repairs, but otherwise this is just one piece of bronze. And so the difference with that helmet is that for all sorts of reasons, things have been added to the design, but they have actually been added. So you have a little piece where you can attach a crest, you have some hooks where you can sort of, you can wrap it up, you have the cheek pieces, you have the ear pieces, you have the neck guard, all of these things have been added, all these bits get added to it. In that sense, this is a much simpler thing to do, although it's much harder to make in the sense that you have to get it just right. But it's a very simple thing in a sense. It's a very simple design. It's a single piece, can't go wrong. Nothing can happen to it. But that also means that it's very monolithic. The design isn't adapted much. It doesn't change very much over time. Cool. So this is why the other helmets presumably became very popular. So you have all these different other types: the Attic, the Illyrian, the Chalcidian, all these different types of helmets that come in over time.
Should we talk briefly about other types of body armor?
Yeah. So on the image you can see a muscle cuirass. So this is the kind of thing that we have loads of examples of this from southern Italy and from Olympia and other places where these things get dedicated. So you have the muscle cuirass, which is the typical sort of hoplite armor. It consists of two big slabs of bronze, essentially. You clip them at the shoulder and at the sides. You just they fold over the body. Essentially very straight, very, very plain, very simple. Nice. Compared to the Lorica Segmentata in particular, with all its little pieces and straps and this and that.
They're big on abs, right?
To the abs, you get this. So later on, they start to have this musculature all developed in there. So this is from the sort of fifth.
And then the Italian ones used in Rome were actually a lot more decorated here, particularly if it's an emperor or a general. They loved decorating the front of where your pectoral muscles are. The Greeks tended to keep them plain. Yeah. Oh, did you know that in Rome, actually, they had two different measures? They had the long ones and they had the short ones. The short ones actually cut at your waist. I've only seen them in iconography in connection to the Navy, though. That doesn't mean that it was a Navy thing, but I'm just saying, just to tell you that. The only evidence that I've seen in iconography of a shorter muscle cuirass, I've seen it in connection to a Navy officer. They both existed.
Century onwards, you start to see these kinds of things. Initially, that design is very plain, it's very schematic. So you have a couple of sort of circles to indicate pectorals. You might have a little sort of arc to indicate the abdomen, but it's very simple. And they will have much more pronounced. So here at the bottom, you can see this actually just stops here at the hip. And the early ones have a sort of pronounced flange there. They have a sort of rim, which is why they're called bell cuirasses, because they tend to have the shape of something resembling a bell. So that is, it's hypothesized that because in the early period, people who could afford this were the wealthy. They would travel around on horseback. It's actually,
I was going to say maybe on chariot, but sure.
Quite nice to have that extra sort of lift so that you can move your legs around, so you can raise your legs when you're on horseback. So it's a nice sort of design that suits the elite standard of this kind of armor. Because the thing is, I mean, the difference between a Roman legionary, even in the Republican period, there's a requirement, certain types of weaponry or certain types of armor and equipment, you just had to buy it, right? That was required. Whereas hoplites, they're just citizens. So they can come to the battle with whatever they can afford. And that also means that there's going to be a lot of variety we've seen in helmets, but also in terms of body armor. Some guys are going to be wearing the bell cuirass or later these nice muscle cuirasses made of bronze, but others don't have that. So the other main design is a cuirass that's called tube and yoke, or this linothorax. So this is a piece of armor that is made out of some organic material, and it's a long, tedious debate over whether this is leather or linen or something else.
Flax.
Absolutely, yeah. There is. I wanted to see if he was going to go into the debate. I do believe it's linen. I'm on the side that believes it was layers and layers of linen, glued together possibly, and then with animal glue or vegetable glue, and then because if you put, I mean, at the end of the day, if you take paper and stack it, it gets difficult to stab through. Even just so I can see, that's why I believe that. And some of these were reinforced with some scales of bronze, for instance, on the abdomen, like that does happen sometimes. But I believe it would have been actual linen
or flax. Basically, so materials that are flexible but can be layered up to be quite protective, and that can be reinforced with iron sort of scales or little plates and things like that as well. So you see that, for instance, in the Alexander mosaic, which is then it's a beautiful image of that kind of decorated linen cuirass. So that's the kind of armor that you might see as well. It's a very simple design. Again, it's literally a tube and yoke. It's a single piece. So you fold it up and then the flap comes over the top. So basically you have these two sort of strips coming over your shoulder tied in the middle, and that sort of secures the whole thing.
Lovely. Alexander.
Again, it's a much simpler design, but basically what you see in the early designs with Lorica Segmentata are that sort of idea. Like you have just single straps over the shoulder and the rest is a tube, essentially. So that's the other design. But obviously there would have been many hoplites going into battle with none of that because they couldn't afford any of the armor, or because they felt the shield by itself would be enough to protect them. And
that is the massive difference, by the way, between Rome and any other power, once again, with the Carthaginian being a little bit of an exception, is that every single Roman was wearing armor and was well equipped. And the standardization of the idea of every soldier is going to be in armor is massive. Even of course, you could have Celtic warriors and Germanic warriors. Their leaders would be in armor, but the common people, not so much. But the Romans, every single one of them. So this is why I think the Mediterranean powers, when it comes to Carthaginians, Romans, and up to a certain extent the Greeks as well, but a little to a lesser degree, the idea of having professional armies fully equipped, fully armored, tactically trained, it's massive. Like in the classical period, it's the Mediterranean.
Then on this image, you have him also wearing greaves, which are very typical Greek design. They're also single piece bronze. They don't seem to have any lining of any kind, and they don't have hinges, so they just clip around your legs. They're quite soft. Obviously bronze is quite sort of bendable, so you just sort of fit them over your legs. You kind of step into them and fit into them. And again with greaves, optional. You see the iconic hoplite obviously with all this kit, helmet, cuirass, greaves, but most hoplite warriors probably wouldn't have carried greaves because that is the least sort of essential part of all of this armor. Although most of these warriors would have worn a helmet, only maybe 1 in 10 or some small minority would have actually worn a cuirass, and maybe 3 in 10 or something like that would have worn greaves.
Very cool. Anyways, I don't want to react to the whole thing. There are quite a lot of sections also because it's a very recent, 5 hours ago. So I'm going to stop here. But if you were entertained and you liked how they were presenting the topic, I thought it was really interesting, very fun, then I got you something to watch for later or for tomorrow, because there is still a lot. There is still a lot to discuss.